Today, what we're going to be showing is really something that can be found in our Exact Forms Plus demo. So I'm going to show you what it's like in our demo right now, just so that you guys can go in yourselves and sort of play around with this and see what it's going to be before you get started in your own app. So I'm going to show you what the finished result is and then how we're going to get there. So I'm going to click here to Demo Exact Forms Plus, and you see we have our project overview. You notice across these tabs at the top, we have advanced subtables. And right here, we have a button that says create project document sub in a sub. So when I generate this, you're going to see a really good example of how to use a subtable within a subtable. And this essentially just quickly shows you the power of what we're going to be going over today. So many of you might not even know that this exists. Thank you, Justin. But this is a feature that is kind of unknown. So we wanted to make sure everyone kind of got a better understanding of how can you do this in your own realm, in your own applications that you're using Exact Forms Plus in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go.
So just, you know what, Matt, just go back to that for a second. So basically what we got here is we're on the project record and we have tasks related to the project because that's the direct child relationship. And then each task could have a bunch of activities. So that's kind of where, that's the grandchild case in this setup here. So it's projects to tasks to activities. So that's kind of just to lay the groundwork here before Matt jumps in and gets into the details.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And this is a good way to explain it. And you know, very simple subtable within the subtable, not too much coloring going on here. You could, of course, get very crazy. Exact Forms Plus subtables has a lot of options. So I'm going to go through kind of a more simple use case on how you could do this in your own apps. So I'm just going to jump into our lease management application. For those of you who have been to our office hours before, this should look very familiar. We continue to recycle this application for many use cases. Now I'm going to jump into my properties and units tables. So I have in my properties and units table, I already have an Exact Forms Plus installed. So for those of you who might be a little bit more new to Exact Forms Plus, if you need the button to generate Exact Forms Plus, now this is more rudimentary stuff, you can always go to the Juice Cloud and do an installation for Exact Forms Plus. Now, again, I try to reiterate this every video. If you need to get to the Juice Cloud, just go to juicetech.com and hit login. That's the best way to get to the Juice Cloud. And that will give you the ability to install this very quickly and easily. It can be done within a minute. If you don't already have access to the Juice Cloud, please reach out to us. We'll get you registered. It's really important that you're all on there. So kind of skipping that step, we already have now Exact Forms Plus installed. So we have the button to generate our document, which I called Generate Lease Summary. And we have our file attachment field where we're going to save this to, and the date field we're going to be updating. So if I were to click this button right now, I'm going to generate a really simple version of this, and I'm going to show you how we're going to edit it. And we're going to make all kinds of changes to it. So this is actually not the simple version of it. I must have not changed that out. But this is just showing you kind of the power of what we can do with potentially showing images and whatnot. But we're going to clean this up because this is a little messy. So what we're going to do is go ahead and close that out. And I'm going to show you guys how we can get the field to include this. So if you look, properties and units, they actually have a relationship to leases. And that's what that subtable we were just showing you was. It showed this is that leases table is the subtable to properties and units. And we're going to also be able to get the grandchild information for that. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into leases. Now I'm going to open up leases. And what I did is I actually already pre-made this sub in a sub field, but all I did was hit settings, new field, and I'll call this sub in sub 2. And I made this formula rich text. So that's really all you're going to need to get started. And I'm going to go ahead, and now that that's already made, I'm going to leave that alone for a second. And I'm going to navigate back to my document templates table. Now, our document templates table should look pretty familiar, might look a little different than yours, but I know that the summary of leases document that I just generated before is coming from the properties and units table. So on that properties and units table, I already have a subtable here. And this is already generated for me. This is what I wanted to create before, but now I want to add that sub and a sub option to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit edit subtable configuration, and you're going to see our exact forms plus subtable configurator come up. So you'll see I already have everything filled out because this was already created. Now, if you guys need help creating subtables, basic subtables, knowing the 101s, we do have office hour sessions on that already. And Justin can put links in the chat of videos that just go over this portion of it. We're going to go through a lot of it again today. But if this doesn't look familiar to you, definitely go to whatever video Justin's about to show. Just to quickly go from the top, though, we have properties and units as our master table and leases as our subtable. We're grabbing any property and unit that has the related lease. And then we're looking at these fields to bring in. So from that leases table, we're grabbing tenant company name, tenant primary contact, email, move out date, and then we also referenced this sub and a sub field. So this sub and a sub, I just made sub and a sub too, but I just wanted to show you guys how to make that. So we're going to keep this as is, and maybe we'll change that to maybe null, or actually let's do releases or invoice summary, because I'm going to give away what I'm doing. So we're summarizing invoices. Just to go through from what these all can do for you. This is the order in which they're going to be coming in left to right. This is the field from the leases table, the field ID. This is the name. And if you don't fill in this over here, now if you don't look at this, this is actually the column label. So if you don't change this, it's going to take the exact field name how it is. I might not want sub and a sub to show. You might name your Quickbase field something different than how you want to present it to your customers or to executives. So we have invoices filled in here and move out date and etc. Field type, and then the width. And the width is actually really important because that's going to control the column sizes for you and how large that's going to show. So you may have things shrunk or maybe too large. So you could always edit that here. You can just put in whatever information you might want. Like maybe this needs to be 60 and this should be maybe 325. So that's how you can do that here. Make sure to always save changes. If you do not, if I hit next, it's going to give me a red message to either save or cancel. So save if you want to save. I am going to come back and talk about sorting and grouping a little bit more, but not on this subtable. Actually, it's going to be in our sub of a sub. So let me go ahead, and I think that's all I wanted to do here. Just quickly show you that I was referencing this field, sub and a sub. So what you guys might be asking now is, what is in that field, sub of a sub? So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to that now. So if I go back to leases, and I'll just open one up and open up sub and a sub. So you see I kind of did it a couple times here. I was messing around with different ones. So don't worry about that. Actually, might even have it open on one of these other tabs. That would make sense to why I did what it did before. But I'm going to use this one. So let me quickly show you why and where I got this from. And then we're going to make some edits to it. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to navigate to, just save this. I'm going to navigate to my document templates again. And I'm going to see which one of mine is coming from the leases table and where did I make that different subtable. So I can actually even go to my subtable and find my lease test. I believe this is the one I want to use. Oh, no, it's actually this one, lease invoices. So in this lease invoices, you create a quick subtable. And again, I already did this. So I'm just going to go ahead and take either in edit mode, make changes to it, which I will be doing in a second, or you just take this whole setting string. And again, we go back to that sub and a sub option, which I guess I have to open back up. And you're just going to place that right in there. Now, let me show you the one thing you're going to need to change, the one difference between these two. is right here. You may see that you don't have quotes on both sides. So here are the two steps. You're going to put quotes on both sides, delete the extra one. And this may look all right to you, but you actually also need to add some ampersands here to identify this field. So if you notice here, we have some quote, ampersand. Now you see it goes green because we're referencing a field. Ampersand, another quote, delete the extra one. And you'll see that now you brought in this exact subtable. So I do have that above right here, but I'll just save this one as well. Now, if you go back to your property and unit, I'm going to generate just this very basic subtable, and I'm going to show you about how to change it. So when I generate this one, it's going to take away that wacky subtable that I had before, and it's going to bring in this very, very simple rudimentary subtable. Now, of course, this might not bring in everything you want. And in the end of the day, in most use cases, you can edit the subtable very easily with the subtable configurator and just jump right back in. This is not the case when you're using these embedded subtables. So if I go back to my subtable, which I think was over here, but let me go back to my subtable, open this one back up, and I'm going to hit edit. And you're going to see after the edits I make, this setting string is going to change pretty drastically. So just follow along here. And again, this is more of a subtable course overview right now. We have lease invoices. The master table is leases, and we're having a related table to invoices. And I'm going to go, every related lease has the invoices related to a specific lease. And let's bring in fields we want to include there. So account holder name might be good to keep in there. Total products base cost we might want to see. Street address, we might not need to see that, but maybe we want the email. But if you look before, we're already capturing the email, so we don't need the email. Pull that back up. So let's see, what else would make sense to include? And let me see, we might want to include the company name, so we could see that again if we don't already have it. And we might want to have
an invoice number.
Invoice number, yep. And I think we had one more that I really wanted to include. Of course, now I'm forgetting, but that's all right. We could always come back and edit this again. That's the beauty of it. So you see that these are all just 50 width too. And when you created that other one, you saw it was very, very standard looking. There was no sizing differences. So account holder name, maybe that might be 100. And this is a little bit of trial and error. You do have to kind of play with it before you know for sure. So there's no exact science to this. Total base cost, I might want to have as 75. Company name, I might want to have that at 75. And also, I might want to be able to move these around. So I might not want to show company name as the third one. I want to have that as the first one. And I probably don't want this whole lease tenant company name as my column header. Probably want to just have, company. Account holder name, I might just want as name. Total products based cost, I might just want to have cost. And then invoice number, maybe I do want invoice number, so I can keep that. So I can save these changes. And then in sorting grouping, I can add some additional information here, but let me go take a look at how it looks first before I do that. And then subtable formatting. So I could already see that my formatting from the last one was this light blue color. So maybe I want to have something that's going to make this stand out a little bit more. So maybe I click this checkbox for row shading. I had a light blue. Maybe I want to do something like a light green. Not sure if that color scheme works at all, but no one ever said I was an artist. We'll go ahead and click save. Subtable configuration has been saved, and close. So as I said before, and I wanted to mention that, see how the setting string had dramatically changed? Now, in most exact forms plus cases, that would apply as long as your strid did not change. This strid is identified on the document, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But in this use case, you do have to grab that whole setting string, copy it, and let's go back and find that sub and a sub field.
And that's a good point because, normally when you do configurations in the configurator, you'll save and it'll save it right back to the document subtables table. When you're using sub and a sub, it doesn't have any connection to that field sub and a sub in your leases table. So that's why you have to recopy and paste it back into this field. It's not going to automatically update it for you like a normal subtable configuration would.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And that's important to note. You might make changes and not update this field. So you get a little confused to say, hey, you know what, why didn't that update? Why didn't that reflect in my sub and a sub? That's because of all of this that we just mentioned. So again, I'm just going to make these same quick changes so that it works. And I'm going to comment out the top one. That's why we're getting that nasty yellow flash over there. And now you see that that's the most latest copy. Now, things I would recommend if you're going to have things commented out, maybe put like strid, equals 7, so you have a better idea of which subtable you have, especially if you have multiple versions of this, kind of like I do here. It can get a little confusing. So identifying what subtable you're even looking at will also save you time and your team's time in the future, so they're not trying to scramble it and find where that is. Even putting a whole thing like, subtable, document subtable record, just to help identify that for future use cases, people don't have to try to track it down. Definitely good as best practices for sure. So when I save this, I don't know exactly how it's going to come across, but let's go back to my properties and units table. And you see these are my related records, and they're all going to have a related invoice. So let's go ahead and generate one and see how it looks. All right, looks a little better. So we have that lime green, which this is pretty ugly colors, I'm not going to lie. But we've got the related company for it, and we see that this is their invoice, what the cost was, and what the invoice number was. So maybe this isn't necessarily the exact information we want to see. So you can jump into the invoices table, and we'll find some fields that make potentially a little bit more sense to show. Something else I want to point out, you can see we were talking about that column width before. One thing like this overflowing where it wraps that text, that's one of the reasons why you'd want to have columns spaced out the way you do, just so that you don't have text wrapping all the way around the side. So I can make this moved out date a little bigger. I could also maybe make company smaller so that all drops to a second line. And something like the headers. Now you might not want to show the headers either. So you might want to put null for the headers. I can go ahead and do that, but let's go ahead and navigate to my invoices table, which I have over here, or I can actually do it this way. I could add or look at the invoice records here. So this is all the information we can include in the sub of a sub. This is my grandchild record. So if I went to Ford Motor Companies, this is my grandchild record for that Ford Motor Company. So maybe I want to include the invoice date, which might be a little bit more beneficial to see when they actually got invoiced, if they paid that invoice. Something else you can include, you show putting null into the header. Don, I could do that. And we can include many other fields, but let's go ahead and show putting null into the header. It's a great suggestion, and maybe I'll put some other of this information in here, like invoice date as well. Go back to my subtable, again, document subtables. This is the subtable we're working on. Let me edit this.
Now, Matt, before, can you do me a favor, just a little clarity here? Can you go back to the subtable record? What template do you have that associated with?
It's a good point. Let me put that on here. Template 1, that's where it is. So good point, Keith. Let's show how to get there. So record 1 for my lease template. And I actually have a subtable here related to it. That's a good point, Keith, to show it. So this is, I have the master table as leases. So I wanted to make a subtable for that leases table. So invoices is related to leases. One lease has many invoices. So that's how you would navigate here. And that's why I chose to make this subtable here. Technically, where we're actually running this properties and units subtable from is a different document template. I did choose to make it here though. Keith, is there any rhyme or reason why you'd want to use?
You only want to make sure that you create the subtable for a template that has the master table as the leases, because again, the leases is in the middle. You have the properties, leases, and then you have your invoices. So you could have just chosen any template that was designed already for the leases table, or if, let's say you didn't have one, you could have just created a new document template record and configured it for the leases. And you don't even have to have a Word document template in the document, in the template file field there. You could have just basically created a blank, or let's say placeholder template, just so that you can create that subtable configuration record that you needed to identify the relationship between leases and the invoices.
Right. So I happen to already have one. You're right. So that's why I used it. But if you don't already have one, like Keith just said, you could pretty easily make this new document template. Two things to point out though, if you're going to use this green button, I get this all the time. So Justin, maybe mark this time. If you're going to use the green button, please be sure to fill in master table name and master table DB ID as well, or else our EFP configurator and subtable configurator buttons will not work. That's one of the reasons why we recommend you do the installation from the cloud, because those fields will already be pre-filled for you with the correct information. Again, for those of you who might be a little bit newer, this DBID, master table DBID, can be found right up here, and that's for whichever table you're generating your document on. Very important to know. I get the question quite often, hey, my configurator buttons aren't working. I found out that they made the document template by hand. Just got to make sure you include that. If it's not on your form, just please include it on your form. That is a very, very, very frequent question. All right. So to digress back to the lease invoices, now that we know where it is, we can still edit this right from here. And I'm going to open this up. And I actually got a request to show putting null in for the headers. So Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I just write null in all caps, is that going to work?
Yes, so what it'll do is it'll show nothing in the header of that first column.
Right. And this is actually something I have gotten before, and this is a good request to show. So if I wanted to show,
but it's going to see what the way Matt's doing this though, it's going to show a column header, but it's just going to have no value in it. So if you sometimes people want to just blank out one column header. They want to keep the other ones like company name and all that, but they just want maybe one column header to not, because maybe it's just representing an image or something else.
Right. Right. Good point. So, right. So what I did there, that will just still show blank headers across the top.
Right. If you don't want to show the headers at all, then you would go to the display column headers that Matt has there and uncheck. That would not show the header at all. So the way Matt did it here, it's going to show the header. If he has that checked and he has those on, it's going to show the header, but it's going to be empty. So I don't know if you'd ever have a good use case for that.
Right. Right. So there's both options though for you. So, I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck that so we don't display headers. And this row shading was kind of annoying me. It looked a little ugly. So maybe we'll do something a little bit nicer. That kind of looks like our color blue. We'll go with that. I'll save this, close. Now again, I can't be too quick to not remove this. So I got to go back, copy that whole settings string from beginning to end, and navigate back to my sub and a sub. Edit the field properties. What I can do is I can, just delete this last option because I kind of know that I don't really need to use that anymore. That's an old copy. If you want to keep the old copy, as I showed you, just comment it out. And then please don't forget, this is an important part, to make sure we show that related field so that this query works. Very important, or else this will not pick up the correct records at all. It will show you just potentially the one record. Right, so if I go back now to my properties and units table, which is my master, then we have the child record, which is leases, and then the grandchild record, which is that invoices. So I wanted to see kind of out of these related leases, what are the invoices for them? I'll try to do spacing. Okay, so I'm glad that we could help you with the answer there, Don, and getting some clarity. Null is definitely the way you want to do it. And now here you see those related invoices. I didn't make any changes to the invoices. Maybe we want to show the invoice date and reflect it to the move out date. Maybe we wanted to remove this email and include the billing email that would have been included on the invoices record. Now, you might also have a couple other use cases with exact forms plus in general that you wanted to include with this. So I actually included this static file over here, field 71. Now, there's some very basic parameters that you can also include into your formula that can make things a little bit better, things that we don't generate for you on demand. So Justin, you can mark this time at the 2:30 mark as, basic going over this formula string. So as always, I've gone over this many, many times, but your whole formula does not need to be touched really ever from line 5 up. You really never need to change that. If you're changing that, you're doing some very advanced stuff. No worries, but it does not need to be done in most use cases. Line 6, TPID. We've mentioned document templates several times now. This document templates table is your template table, and this record ID is which document you're going to be generating with this button. So TPID equals 3. In this use case, we were generating summary of leases. This TPID equals 3. That's why we have 3 there. In another video, we've shown you guys making dynamic changes to this so that it's based off of a formula. And you might want to have a formula that says, okay, if we're generating the invoices, use template 1. If we're generating purchase orders, use template 2. If we're generating work orders, use template 3. Those are just fields in Quickbase you could pretty easily make, and you can reference here. FN, file name. This is how you're going to name your file and how it's going to generate. Here you can actually see property lease summary at the top. So that's how you're naming that there. You can also include fields on that as well. MSID, this is really the record ID. I know it says property and unit number. Don't get confused by this. This is an app we got off the exchange where they changed the record ID number to be property/unit number. This is not typical, but if you did change record ID, this would be record ID number. MSDB, this is the DB ID. This is the table we're running from. If you remember, I was actually just talking about these DB IDs. We're just using this to identify the current table's DB ID. Then we have FAID, which is the file attachment field we're saving to, and EFB GTE, that's the field we're updating. Now I'm going to quickly add one more here, and this is one of our most common extracurricular parameters, and it's called add files. And what you can do is you can just put follow the same format as everything else. And for that add files, I'm actually going to be using, of course, now I forget the field number, but I'm just going to be using one field number. And for this example, it's field 71. So I have this add-ons sheet here. And I'm just going to use 71. And I'm going to now include that, and I'm going to kind of append that document to our file that we're generating. We have doc.fmt, so we're generating this as a PDF, and then we're streaming this back to our browser. That's what stream equals y does. App token is not necessarily needed as often anymore. That's more of an older feature. And now user tokens really take full command. So unless your app requires app tokens, you really don't need it there. Something else that a lot of people don't actually know, you can display this as a button. Sometimes it does come across as a regular URL. So you want to hit display as a button. You can pick whatever color you want. Maybe I want to make this blue. And then, of course, you can name your button. So it probably says by default, generate EFP document. You can change this to be whatever type of document you're generating. And I always recommend in a new window. Now I can go back to that button, generate it again. And now I'm actually going to append that add files document to this document itself. So you can see I have my one document here, and now I have also these additional PDFs that I'm showing. So it's a very common kind of one include the other type feature. You may already have many other PDFs in your records that you want to include. So that's a pretty quick and easy hit for a lot of people. So that is basically the 101 of that subtable. Things that I can do to kind of show you guys more of the power of it is I can do some grouping options, which I might go back to one of my older templates just to show you, which might have better grouping. But I'm going to pause for a second and see if anyone's got any questions. I do have another question. Can we grab the document from S3? Good question, Keith. Can we do add files from S3?
Yes, and we have that. If you look at the help site for Exact Forms Plus, and you look at the formula URL parameters, and then you scroll down to add files, it's probably under miscellaneous, I think. There you go. If you look to the right, you'll see that that second one there. So this is dot delimited. So basically this is saying add files, take the file from file attachment field 109 and also 108, and then also take the file from Amazon S3. So it's basically saying the table ID, then it's saying the record ID, and then S3, meaning we want to grab the S3 key value, BBB underscore 123. So that BBB 123, that's the actual key that it's stored in S3 with. So you have to reference the table ID, the record ID, and the key that the file is stored in Amazon S3. So as long as we have your S3 parameters, like your access key and your secret key, stored on your client profile, then we can go grab files from Amazon S3 and append them. And again, one thing you got to make sure is the files have to be PDFs. Exact Forms Plus can't convert docs, Excel files, images, whatever. So they already have to be stored in PDF format in order to use the add files. That's one of the things we're going to be working on in future versions of Exact Forms Plus, to be able to use different types of files. But for now, add files and pre-files, because the pre-files does the same thing but puts the file ahead of the generated document. But right now, all add files, pre-files have to be PDFs. But yes, you can get them from Amazon S3 as well.
All right. Now, if you guys did need files to be converted, we do have PDF merger as well, which also has S3 parameters. So if it's not in PDF format, no worries. We do have a solution for that currently. It's just not going to be only Exact Forms Plus. You're going to have to use PDF merger as well. Great add-on. So that's something to consider. One thing I want to do is I want to kind of just go back and start from the very top so that everyone's got this clear. As always, you want to start from a master record, and in every use case that we see, a master record likely has related child records. In this, we have properties and units have many leases, and this leases have many invoices. And you can see I actually have this add invoice button here at the bottom. So if I wanted to generate a grandchild record, I can actually add an invoice, testing 1, 2, 3. And I can also include whatever information you normally would. This would be your normal input of data as normal people would do. The invoice date might not be filled out. Maybe I want to add an item to that. And let's say it's a warehouse. We bring that item back in. So now we have our invoice with an invoice item that we already have. This was actually the last office hours we did. We used this where we made an invoice with invoice items, then we generated it using actually Excel docs. So we generated our invoice using Excel docs. But now if you go back, all the way back to the top, back to your lease, and if I wanted to go even one up, where is it? Here, but if I wanted to go even one up, you go back to your property. So now I added that additional invoice to one of these 3 leases. And again, you can now see that from a summary of the grandchild record from that table we have there. So this, we're bringing in this subtable, which has a subtable within it as well. So now you can see that bottom one has one. One thing I want to show, which is actually on our demo that I didn't include here, when you generate this document, Keith put a really nice option in there that would make a lot of sense for your users to show no activities for this task. And that's just a formula that Keith made. And Keith, is that really field 137?
Yes, it should be 137 on the task table.
On the task table. Okay, let me go check out the task table.
But I'm going to show you. But kid, go there. That's not really where that value comes from. Oh yeah, well you can do that. You can also, there's another way to do that as well. So you can do it there.
Right.
Or if you, on the template itself, you could have used the message details not found field. But then you couldn't really, the reason why I'd use it there is because I wanted it to be specific to the activities. Because I'm pulling the grandchild. So if we would have put it on the document template record, if you go back to document template number 1, actually in your example,
Right.
see there's a no, where's the no message field? Okay, can you add that field?
I can.
This is an interesting one because nobody really probably knows too much about this.
I don't know what this field does.
If you put a value in there, so if you edit that and you say no records found, if there are no records found, that will replace the strid on the template. But here, if you wanted to be more specific and say no activities found, that's why you would actually put it in the grandchild formula field. Because if you put it here and you said no leases found, it wouldn't make sense. So you'd have, that's why I had to actually put it in the formula itself.
Interesting. Well, I'll be honest with you. I've never used that before, and I probably have been underserving our community of users as I've not taught them about that field.
Yes, it's really just something that if for some reason you're trying to show a subtable and there's no records found for that subtable, you put a value in there, and that's what will show on the generated document instead of nothing, instead of a blank value.
Right. That's very good to know, and highlight that definitely in another video sometime. We did get a question, which we appreciate the participation. Is there a way to auto adjust the size of the box/width of the column based off of how much text is entered? I see Don throwing his hands up in the air like he's asked that question.
No, it's not. It won't dynamically change the width of the box. So it's going to be a set width based on how you set it up in the configurator itself.
Well, I definitely
sorry.
have. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry to jump in. So we have some scenarios where users enter like an entire paragraph into the field. For example, it's like a description. And in other cases, that description can only be 1 or 2 words. So it's hard just to expect how much space I leave in that box, or how much space I leave in that column. So if I leave too small, and chances are it can't be fully displayed. If I leave it too much, then there's too much empty spaces in the form. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
so,
the challenge we'd have with that is, let's say you had a subtable that had hundreds of records. And,
yeah.
They could be all over the map. So we would have to try to figure out, of the 100 records selected to be shown, which one has the biggest number of characters in it, and then size accordingly. So it'd be nice to do, but it's something that would probably be a little bit more cumbersome to actually try to have that auto generate like that. The only other thing you could do is you could vary the field.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you could create another field in your subtable, and you can try to do that within Quickbase. So a formula field can say, you'd have to do it somehow through formulas. You might even have to use summary queries in order to figure out what's the max characters of the number of records that might be for this master record. I think it's very complicated to try to figure that out. It would be nice if we could, but I think it's something that's not a simple solution for.
Okay, got it.
Could you have the description be its own subtable, just kind of like what Keith was saying before? In that own subtable, you just identify somewhere on your document where you have ample space for description?
Yeah, but I think I understand what Dee's trying to get at.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if there's a really good solution for it.
Good question, though. We appreciate those questions. All right. So just to kind of summarize everything we just went over, one thing to note too is I actually never updated my document template once in this whole process. So I had my document template number 3, which is super simple Word document, which I called strid1. And I actually just took basically a blank Word document and just used this. That's all that's on my document. And that strid1, again, I'm looking at this subtable right here, which then if I edit this, again, see, just to kind of circle back and finish the conversation, sub and a sub is what I had posted there. That sub and a sub field is just a formula rich text that lives on the leases table, because that's the child table, that's a lease test, so lives on the leases table, where then I'm grabbing all the related invoices. So that is right here. Actually, no, sorry. That sub and the subs right here, where I'm using this setting string to show. And that setting string is coming from just another document template record. As we mentioned again, I go to document template number 1. That's master table leases, where I made strid7. So there's really a lot of different use cases you could use this for. I hope that people now will have this video to reference in the future, where they want to go over and include those child records, those grandchild records in their subtable. But for right now,
hey Matt, stay here for a second. Sorry to jump in. One other way you could potentially do this is if you had 2 configurations, one that had that description defined as, let's say, maybe 300, and another one, let's say strid7 had that description field set at 350, and then 5 had it the description field set at 50. You can somehow vary that strid that's used in the template. So based on a field in your table. So in this case, we have the leases table. So what Matt could do is create a field in the leases table that could vary the strid. So you can say, if some summary field from your child table equates to some value that's telling you, hey, use the bigger description field as opposed to the smaller description field. So really, just type in here quickly, Matt. You could just say, and this is not for the subtable, for the grandchild. Just say, if field 1 greater than 500. Just, you don't have to specify a field. Just, we're not going to save this. Just take field 1. Just type in the word field 1. If field 1 greater than 300, then you're going to do a comma, double quote, strid equals 7. Tilde strid equals 7.
Sorry.
Else, the comma, strid equals 5. So then you would use this field in your template. Instead of putting tilde strid equals 7, you use field 153 in your template. So now you have to figure out, how do I determine what field 1's value, what's the case that I want to use, where I want to use strid 7 versus strid 5. So it's one way that you might be able to get that use case, Diane. Is it Diane? I'm sorry. But anyway, that's one way you can vary that description that you were talking about, the width of description. That's the only way I can really think of giving you that that variation. But you kind of have to figure that out on your own through some querying of the data in the description field to determine which width strid do I want to use when I click the button to generate that lease document. Don't save that, Matt, otherwise you'll screw up your field.
Yeah, I don't think it would allow me to save it though. But it's good to know, and this is ways where you can just quickly vary what you're going to be generating with Quickbase. This is one of the powerful things about Quickbase, is having these formulas natively right here. So it's always good to know what you can do as alternative options instead of making potentially many things.
And I think we had an office hours that showed how to vary this. I think Matt, you did one, how to vary the subtable. I'm not sure if Justin can find that one quick, but we did have one to show you how to do that.
Yep, we did do that. Again, And for those of you who don't know, we post all of our office hour videos on our help site and on YouTube. So you'll be able to see all of the past recordings. Justin does a great job of time stamping all of these, so you don't have to watch all the fluff and watch me make a fool out of myself every once in a while. So you can just kind of jump to those exact spots. They're really, really helpful. We send them to people all the time. We hope that you guys get value out of them. We hope that you guys get value out of this session. This is something that's a little bit more advanced. Again, thank you, Don Larson, for bringing this topic up to us. This is a good one. We really appreciate it. And if you guys ever have a topic that you guys want to talk about that you think would be a good office hour session, please feel free to email me or Keith, and we'd be happy to make that the spotlight topic if we think it's going to be worth displaying.